Nehemiah 4 verse 14 has been our main scripture that we've been looking at over the run of these weeks, these 9 weeks now. We got a few weeks left of our Great and Glorious series. Nehemiah 4:14. You probably haven't memorized, but we got it on the screens and on your screen at home, just in case. It says, then as I looked over the situation, I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who's great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Listen, if you only take one thing from this supersized series, take this. We don't have to be afraid. We can stand firm because God's got this. He's got it. 3 words that carry so much peace and so much power, will remove so much fear and anxiety and worry in your life. Is just to remind yourself on a regular basis, God's got this. Why don't you actually take a moment, turn to somebody beside you, put it in the chat, just say, he's got this. He's got this. Come on, remind you. Maybe you're sitting by yourself. You got to remind yourself, he's got this. He's got this. Would you pray with me? God, thank you that you're here today. God, thank you that whatever it is, whatever we face, you've got it. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right, I want to get into this. I'm excited today. We're going to go to Nehemiah chapter 7. We are looking at the story of Nehemiah, his journey, and they've been working to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. In Nehemiah chapter 7, the walls are done. We get a bit of a picture of what's going on. So Nehemiah chapter 7, verse 3 says, I said to them, the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also, appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some at their posts and some near their own houses. The walls are up, the doors are hung, and then Nehemiah gives instruction to take residents of Jerusalem and station them as guards, both near their homes and on specific posts. Gets the guards out. The title for today's talk is Get Your Guard Up. Get your guard up. Come on, write it down. Put it in the chat. Get your guard up. Get your guard up. A few weeks ago, my father-in-law decided to show my 8-year-old son a compilation video of Mike Tyson's best knockouts. The best knockouts from Iron Mike. And since then, all Tanix wants to do is box. So on one hand, actually, I was thinking about it. I'm glad he just showed him the knockouts. I'm glad he didn't show him the time when he bit off Evander Holyfield's ear, or else maybe he'd be running around trying to bite our ears off. But he's wanting to fight. He's wanting to box. So like it's ongoing every day. At some point, it's like, Dad, you want to fight? Dad, can we fight? If we get to the end of the day and we haven't fought yet, it's Dad, we forgot to fight. Like it's a big deal. And so I'm trying to help him. I'm like, okay, he's motivated. I want to try and pull this like angsty fighter spirit out of him. And so I've done some boxing. I did one of those fitness classes where, yeah, whatever. Before you get all judgy, I own my own like wraps. You know the wraps? If you don't even know, do you even box if you don't know that there's wraps that you put on your hand? I got my own wraps wrapped around my hand, get in the gloves. I mean, if you own your own wraps, you're a pretty legitimate boxer. So I own my own set of wraps. I forgot until we moved last week and I found them at the bottom of a box. But I own my own wraps. And so I've done one of those classes, and I mean, it just about killed me. Even though the bag doesn't punch back, I don't know how I'd do in a real boxing match, but I own the wraps. So I've been trying to help him. I'm like, son, this is an uppercut. You know, this is a jab. We're working on some technique, you know, and things are good. You know, what I found, though, is that more than my punching skills, because if you're a dad, you shouldn't really be practicing your punches on your 8-year-old. It's just good fatherly advice. More than my punching skills, I've had to pull out all of the good blocking technique that I've learned over the years. And I've done enough like 30-minute insanity workouts with Sean T that I know some great blocking moves too. So you might think, oh, his training's not legitimate, but I've got wraps, I've boxed, and I know how to block. So I'm a pretty well-rounded fighter. And so, you know, you in the cardio workout, you get in like this position, and there's like this, I can't remember I should have looked up what they were called because it would have made me sound so much more legitimate. But, you know, there's like this block where you go over to the side, and then they hit you, and you're like, whoa, yeah, right? And then you come this way, that way. You can like block down, right? Like those are pretty good. Natasha's like, don't do that. You look like an idiot. But here we are, trying to sell the point. So I've been working on my blocking skills because what happens is like Tanix, even though every once in a while he'll invite me into a fight and I know it's coming, what's been happening too often is that he just sucker punches me. And so twice this week I got sucker punched, and you know, he's 8 and I'm super fit and chiseled and everything. You can't really tell from where you are, but trust me. And so, but he's still, when he catches me off guard, I'm like, it wins me just a little bit. And so the other night, I'm putting him to bed, and apparently we had forgot to fight. I didn't remember that. And so I'm going in for like my, hey, I love you, son, that final hug. And I'm not, you know, it's late. I'm trying to keep things pretty subdued. I want him to go to sleep. And I'm like, love you, buddy. And just, bam, he just punches me. And it's like, you know, and fine. So but I got to work on my blocks. And then yesterday, we're playing video games. I'm just sitting on the couch, minding my own business, like quality time. But I was kind of in and out of being asleep, you know. And we're playing a little video games. And he just looks over at one point. He's like, Dad, bam, just like sucker punched me. And so the blocking is really important. I've been working on around the house, obviously not successfully, but trying to get my guard up so that when he comes at me with a little sneak attack, I don't get sucker punched. Doesn't take the wind out of me, doesn't frustrate me, doesn't make me want to throw him off the couch, down the stairs, whatever. Like, I've been trying to keep things, if I can block, it's actually better for him and it's better for me. You got to be able to block. You got to get your guard up. And I'm working on it. 1 Timothy, 6, verse 20 says, Timothy, guard, get your guard up, what's been entrusted to your care. Turn away from godless chatter and the opposing ideas of what is falsely called knowledge, which some have professed, and in so doing have departed from the faith. Okay, here's my big thought for the talk today. A lot of our problems, issues, and frustrations come because we don't protect what God provides. It says you've got to guard what you've been given, Timothy. You've been entrusted. I've given you something. I've deposited something on the inside of you. I've brought you somewhere. I've given you an opportunity. You've got to guard what you've been given. You've got to protect what's been provided. And we run around frustrated at God, frustrated at others, frustrated at ourselves, running, God, don't you still move? Don't you still do miracles? Aren't you involved in my life? He's like, yo, I'm involved over and over and over and over again. It's answer after answer after answer. But if you don't protect it, Paul doesn't say, hey, Timothy, God's entrusted you with something. I'm going to guard it for you. He doesn't say, hey, Timothy, God's entrusted you with something, and God's going to take care of guarding it for you. No, we have a responsibility to protect what God has provided. And so for anybody that feels that they're on this cycle of never getting ahead and wondering why you can't seem to catch a break, and you feel like you're repeating the same things over and over and over and over again, it's likely God has answered, God has responded, God has opened, God has done what God does. And if you don't protect it, you'll just keep going back to the same old thing. You got to protect what God provides. The answer to the prayer, you know, he brought you the raise. He maybe gave you the new job. The finances came through. The provision showed up. But instead of paying off your debt and tithing and protecting what God gave you, you increased the financial demands by increasing the type of lifestyle you have. And all of a sudden, you're stressed out again and you wonder why. It's not God's fault. You got to protect it. God brought you your soulmate. Another win, another positive recommendation for ChristianMingle.com. It's you. They even looked like their profile picture, which is a huge win. Maybe you met somebody in your I Declare War mixed online EC group. Sparks have been flying over Zoom. And so you're like, forget about the restrictions. We need to meet each other right now. And so you've got this passion and this excitement for your relationship. I don't know how you met. But maybe God provided the person, but you haven't protected what was provided for you, started sleeping together, and all of a sudden you've been sidetracked from what God was actually trying to accomplish. You've cut the legs out from under his purpose in your life. Maybe Maybe God brought you the spouse and you're married and it's like, man, this is what I prayed for. This is what I dreamt about. But you didn't protect the relationship. And so you started looking at things you shouldn't look at, or having text conversations that you shouldn't have, or sliding in for lunch meetings or car rides, and your heart has started to drift. Why? Because you didn't protect what God provided. God provided a way out. You've been sober, but then you started to think that it was all you. And I'm the reason I got here. And I'm the reason I got my life pulled together. And you let your guard down, and then nobody heard for you from a week because you went on another bender because you didn't protect what God provided. He says you got to guard what's been provided. Guard what's been entrusted. From what? From godless chatter, opposing ideas, philosophies, things that are anti-Christ, anti-biblical morality and values. He says these things are things that we falsely call knowledge. The philosophical deconstruction, wokeism, terrible theological ideas that are cutting the legs out from underneath Orthodox Christianity and values, trying to weaponize and socialize the Bible. These are things that are falsely called knowledge. We got to get our guard up. We have to get our guard up. The wall is finished. Nehemiah puts the guards in place. But for a little bit of context, go back with me to Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15. It says, so the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. Don't just read over 52 days like it's nothing. That's a big deal. 52 days. It had been 140 years of exile. That's almost 52,000 days of exile. It's actually 51,135 days of exile. Almost 52,000 days of hurt, pain, confusion, worry, things not going according to plan. And people had started to measure their pain and the season of pain in years, 140 years. Now notice, what they were measuring in years, God turned around in weeks. 52 days. We have this tendency, the longer something goes, the longer a season goes, the longer a struggle goes, the more we start to think, well, the longer it goes, the longer it's going to take to get out of it. What I love about the story of Nehemiah is this reminder that what took 140 years to build up and happen, God turned around in 52 days. Come on. Has anybody felt like the last 12 months has been the longest 2 weeks of your life? Guess what? God can turn it around in a couple of days. And you might be going through something that's not pandemic related. I don't know what everybody's facing, but I've been taking comfort in this story knowing that God can change things in a hurry. What's been giving me hope is this reality, waking up in the morning saying, God, I don't know if it's today, but it could be. You could turn everything around today. You can change things in a hurry. If you can build a wall in 52 days, if he can calm a storm with a sentence, then he can mend a broken heart. He can turn sorrow into joy. He can heal and deliver and restore. Just as fast as you get the words out, God can get the work done. A lot can happen in 52 days. A lot can happen today if you really believe that this is the day the Lord has made. If you come into it with some expectation. A lot can happen just in moments that we share together like this. The wall got built in a hurry. Now what changed? Why was it 140 years of no progress and then 52 days of radical transformation? The people knew there was a problem the whole time. That was obvious. The ones who remained would have talked about, no doubt, reminisced about the good old days. Remember when we had a wall? Man, having a wall was the best. Man, I loved having a wall. They reminisced about it. The people who were in exile knew that there used to be a wall and there wasn't a wall anymore. It was always God's desire for there to be a wall so that his people could be set apart for his purposes, for his glory, for his fame. And you got to be careful. You can't blame God for the fact that the walls were down. See, because it was always God's plan that they would have that structure as part of their relationship with him. They were down as long as the people allowed them to stay down. It was on the people. For 140 years, nobody thought things could be different. until one day, this regular guy that we've been studying, Nehemiah, stands up and says, wow, guys, it doesn't have to be this way. One person more worried about calling than comfort. One person more determined to be significant than safe. One person willing to do the right thing over the easy, socially acceptable thing. One person who believed the truth that God had a plan over the narrative that this too would be impossible. It started with one person. One person put things in motion for a 52-day miracle. The same God who took Nehemiah's yes and used it to perform a miracle is the same God that got Jesus out of the grave. It's the same God that is just waiting for a yes from us to say, wow, things don't have to be this way. And so the wall's done. Verse 16 says, all our enemies heard about this, and the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. The work's done, and what stands out to me is that the criticisms keep coming, but Nehemiah pays no attention to them. And also the fact that people aren't noticing Nehemiah. Nehemiah didn't strike fear into the heart of the previously overconfident, confrontational enemy. It wasn't Nehemiah that they were talking about in their camps. It was the fact that God had been a part of the work. Nehemiah's yes got people talking. It got people looking and thinking, man, did you see what God did? Because listen, every God vision ends with God. Right? So just to understand how to steward the vision that God's put on the inside of your heart, listen, if you look at it playing out and you think that it ends with you or ends with your success or ends with your joy or ends with your happiness or ends with your contentment or ends with your fulfillment, we are missing it. There's actually more to the vision than that because every God vision ends with God. That's why if you got a God vision for your business, you got to see it through to fruition and understand that I'm doing this for the glory of God. That's why God's vision for your marriage, see it through. It's not just that you'll be happy, it's that he'll be glorified through how you treat your spouse. God's vision always ends with God. And as it ended with God, it brought glory to him. People started to take notice. So Nehemiah says, man, this is special. We've walked out, lived out, carried out this vision. Now God has provided in a miraculous way, and we have to protect what's provided. And so he appoints the guards, some near their homes and some near their posts. Now, I think it's really interesting that he assigns guards to two different locations. One is very personal, their homes. One is more communal, it's the posts. We have a responsibility to get our guard up both in our personal lives and as members of a community. We really have no problem, like just as people, we don't really have an issue getting our guard up. Everyone kind of has their guard up all the time right now. Everyone's kind of just looking for reasons to be offended. Just get your guard up. We guard a lot of things. I've got right guard on right now, protecting my wife. Got my guard up. I got my guard on so I can put my hands up. Get our guard up. We guard our skin. You go outside, people are putting, when it gets warm out, putting sunblock on, that SPF 60. Make sure you don't get too much sun. We guard things like our lawns. I did some lawn protection, some power stuff for my lawn last spring. Turns out when you put that stuff on your lawn and you don't water your grass, it just burns it all. So don't do that. But we guard those things. We got car alarms. We got passwords on everything. We got alarm systems in our homes. Man, not only do we got passwords on everything, in our house, we have like a password pandemic in that nobody knows what the passwords are for anything except for my 8-year-old. Okay? So, a few weeks ago, he suckered me in. He asked me to unlock one of my devices for him, and I unlocked my iPad. I didn't know, a little bit of the devil in him still, I didn't know that he was watching while I punched in the passcode. And then for a whole week, he's authorizing purchases on every kid's device. And I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, oh, last Sunday in the car, I saw your passcode. I was like, uppercut. Man, my wife is so amazing. But the girl does not know, this is just, sometimes I make things up about you, but this is true. You don't know any passwords. Can't log in to nothing. Like, she doesn't know any of her passwords. And we had like a big breakdown last night because she had to try and log into something. And so I have, great husband, I'd put like one of those password, like security apps on her phone, the one that keeps all your passwords. Problem is, it wasn't recognizing her face, and she didn't know the password for the password log app. And so she's freaking out. I can't get into anything. I don't know any password for anything. And like, we solved it, but it was a bit of an issue. We got lots of passwords. We got lots of guards. We guard our kids. Probably too much. I mean, 30 years ago on a family road trip, you didn't argue about what movie you were gonna watch or whether you could have access to the Wi-Fi, because those things didn't happen in cars 30 years ago. You argued about who got to lay on the floor. That was the argument. I wanna lay on the floor in front of the bench seat. That was the big deal. Or you got to sit up in the front in between mom and dad, but there's no seatbelts there, so your protection is mom's left forearm. Like, that's how we did it like 30 years ago. That's the way it worked. And now kids are in car seats till they're 18. We're just guarding them. Listen, can I just say something to all the rear-facing car seat people? I understand it to a point, but if your kid is checking their own social media and they're still in the rear-facing car seat, you're obsessed. You gotta let it go. There's no point where like that car seat should be cutting them off at the knees. That can't happen. If they can swing their knees around the car seat, you gotta turn them around. It's not right. All these rear-facing car seat people. Love you. Probably a helicopter parent. Got guards. We're really good at being guarded. You know what Proverbs 4 verse 23 says? It says, above all else. So just think about that statement, above all else. So above the protection we put on our money and the guards we put on our homes and our phones and our seatbelts, above every other thing you could possibly guard your heart. For it is the wellspring of life. Are you guarding your heart? Are we taking responsibility for what we're supposed to personally guard? I mean, we put all of this effort and make all of the investment into guarding these other things, but according to Proverbs chapter 4:23, those things are really secondary things if your heart is left exposed. And so often, too often, we leave the door to our heart and our mind wide open, and our thoughts run wild, and our emotions take over, and we wonder, God, why am I so irritable? Why am I always so unhappy? Why can't I get a good night's sleep? Why am I so sensitive? Why am I unsatisfied? Why do I keep trusting people that I should be walking away from? Why do I keep struggling with the same old things? Because you let your guard down. Because everything flows from your heart. And if you don't guard your heart, you honestly might as well not guard anything else. Why is it that we don't guard our hearts? I think it's just a quick little survey here. If you're watching with us online, you can put this in the chats. But if you're in the room and you got an iPhone, if you have an Android, it's cheap anyways, don't bother. But if you have an iPhone, go ahead, pull it out real quick. Let's just see it. If you got an iPhone, I'm just kidding. There's no judgment. This church is for everybody, okay? We're for everyone. So my guess is that almost every phone that I can see has a case on it, right? Now, why do we put cases on our phones? Well, because sometimes you drop them. And guys, I have a case. It's protected, okay? Relax. We protect them because they're valuable. Because if I didn't have a case and I dropped it, it would probably break. I don't understand the irresponsible, reckless people that I see every now and then walking out in public with no case on their phone. Have you ever seen that? Somebody with their phone up to their ear, no case. I always double check. I'm like, is it an invisible case? Is there something I'm not seeing? And they just walk around. Like, if I drop it, I can replace it. No big deal. Like, who are you? What sort of side business do you have? What sort of pyramid scheme are you a part of that you can just afford phone after phone after phone? Like, it freaks me out. I worry for you. when I see you walking around with your caseless phone. We protect them because they're valuable. And I think one of the reasons we struggle to take protecting our heart seriously is because we undervalue our heart. Listen, your heart is so significant. It says it is the wellspring of life. Like your life literally flows from what the condition of your heart looks like. The words that you speak are connected to your heart. The way you navigate and build relationships are connected to your heart. The way you see yourself is connected to your heart. Your actions and your attitudes and your ambitions and your faith, they all flow from your heart. If we really truly understood that everything in our lives is a manifestation of what's happening in our heart, we'd take better care of putting our guards up. Not only do we not understand the full value of our heart, but sometimes we devalue what God's actually done in our hearts. We devalue the work. Come on, you deserve to protect your heart because you're actually here right now. You deserve to be protected. You should be protected. Like don't underestimate the significance of you actually being here. When you think about the fact that you could have been anywhere, but Jesus made the decision to save you and give you a second chance. Man, that's valuable. Matthew chapter 6 says, look at the birds of the air. Aren't we more valuable than the birds? You have value, and your story has value, and your struggle has value, and your progress has value. Listen, it is so important that you're here today. It's so important that you are still breathing air. 1 Corinthians 6:20 says that you were bought with a price. You should be protecting your heart because you're valuable. And if you're valuable to him, you got to be valuable to you. You got to get your guard up. We got to guard our hearts. You deserve to be protected. So how do we guard our hearts? And I want to combine, and maybe on a different day we do it differently, but I want to combine our hearts and our minds together, because see, what happens in your heart is connected to your mind. What happens in your mind gets connected to your heart. They work in tandem. How do we guard our hearts and our minds? The first thing, write this down, is that you don't believe everything you think and feel. You want to guard your heart and your mind? Don't believe everything that you think and you feel. Your emotions will lie to you. We got to just accept the fact, Jeremiah says the heart is deceitful and wicked, it cannot be trusted. We have to just accept the fact that we lie to ourselves all the time. All the time. Some of the lies that you've probably told yourself, maybe even today, things aren't as bad as they seem. We lie to ourselves and say, man, things are so much better than they really are. We tell ourselves, man, I'm doing okay, even though we're not. We tell ourselves that it's not a big deal when it actually is a big deal. We tell ourselves it's a little deal when it actually is a big deal. We tell ourselves not to worry, but we still do. We tell ourselves to be positive, but we're not. We tell ourselves, I can do this. I've got self-control. Lie. Listen, just because you get a thought doesn't mean it's correct. Just because you feel an emotion doesn't mean it's true. Think about the things that impact your thoughts and emotions. How much sleep did you get last night? The amount of sleep that I get impacts my thoughts and my emotions so much. I can't leave my future in the hands of my sleep patterns. I just started, like a week ago, I started wearing my watch when I sleep, and so I could track my sleep. I want to see how much deep sleep am I getting? How much light sleep am I getting? How long am I? It's depressing. I don't sleep enough. But now Natasha's got this ammo. So if I get up and I get up on the wrong side of the bed and I got a little bit of an edge, she's like, can I see your sleep tracking? Because it matters. Some of you can't function when you're tired. So don't let your thoughts and your emotions run away with you because you're depleted in your sleep. Some of you can't function when you're hungry. Get a little hangry, get a little edged, get a little upset. You're just short fused. Man, you just need a snack. Don't make decisions when you're hungry. Your emotions and your thoughts. When you think about how volatile and how unpredictable our emotions and our thoughts are, you can't possibly trust them. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12 says, the word of God is alive and active, sharper than a double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. So listen, every time you get a thought, every time you get a feeling, you bring it back here, and in a place of maturity, you say, does this line up with what God's word says? Does it line up with God's promises over my life? Does it line up with what I know to be true about God's character? Does it line up with what God says about me? Does it line up? Because see, the word of God is living and active, and it's so sharp that it'll divide soul and spirit. Soul, that's your mind, your will, and your emotions. It'll help you know this is the emotional me, and this is what God really wants, the spirit. It judges the thoughts and attitudes. Listen, you do this right, you don't need somebody else to judge your attitude. You get the word of God out in front of it all, and he's going to judge it for you. Judge the thoughts and attitudes. Does it line up? That's the first thing. The second thing that we have to do is you got to own your emotions. Own your emotions. Listen, I live in this constant state of tension between trying to own my emotions and my emotions owning me. I'm a little volatile. I'm a little bit emotional. I don't mind admitting that. But I constantly have to remind myself, I cannot let my emotions own me. How often do we give away the ownership of our emotions to somebody else? All the time. It's not just about having them under control. It's about whose control have they been placed in. Because, even like the phrase, man, they just made me mad. Really? You gave somebody else authority over your emotional state? They made you mad? Like there's nothing you can do about it. The only option for you and how to respond to what they've done is anger. That's it. That's the only thing? That's the only thing you can do is be angry? Oh, they put me in a bad mood. What? They put you in a bad mood. So they did something, and now you've allowed them to put you, was this like time out for your mood? What are you doing? I got put in a bad mood. I'm gonna stay here. Like, what are you doing? Aren't you grown? Aren't you an adult? They put you there? So do you have to wait for them to change or them to apologize before you can be let free from the bad mood? Truth is, they probably don't even realize that they put you in a bad mood and they've gone on their merry way. And meanwhile, you're over here in mood purgatory just waiting. Listen, I'm not saying things don't happen. I get it. Things happen, and we get angry, but there's things that happen that would cause anger. You got to decide, am I going to be an angry person? Am I going to stay angry? Am I going to let my emotions rule me? Am I going to give the authority about how I feel and the thoughts that I think, and then ultimately the course and direction of my life over to somebody else, or am I going to own it? You got to own it. You made the decision to allow your emotions to get there. Yes, you got cut off. Everything that happened after that, the bird, the word, all this stuff, that's on you. That's you. And things happen, but we got to accept. You got to take ownership. You will never guard what you don't own. You can't guard what you don't own. It's awkward. Some people, we moved out of a house last week. And some people moved into the house, and they're probably not watching, so it's fine. I've called our security company for the alarm system we had on that house, no joke, 8 times in the last probably 10 days saying, you have to take me off the security panel. You've got to take me off. But I could open it up right now. I checked it in between services, and I could tell you how many times they've gone in and out of the back door today. I could tell you, because I'm still guarding the house. It's so weird. You're saying, why don't you just delete the app? I don't know. It just feels good. Don't judge me. You can't guard what you don't own. So you got to be willing to say, listen, if I'm angry, nobody else did this to me. It's my response, and my response is my responsibility. I've made the decision. My emotions. And listen, it's not just anger. It's offense. It's loneliness. It's hurt. It's all, man, you can lump in the whole spectrum of emotions. You are responsible for how you feel. And when you take responsibility for it, you can guard it. 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5 says, we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Man, I love that picture. I'm going to take it captive. When that emotion starts to stir up, when that thought starts to come into my head, I can take it captive. I'm actually going to hold that thought hostage. I'm going to put that thought in its own little timeout, because I don't need that thought to have any influence or any authority in my life. You can take captive the thought. We got to wrestle those thoughts into submission and put them in their place so they stop destroying our relationships and robbing us of the destiny God created us for. Guard your heart. The third thing is you got to control what comes in. Nehemiah chapter 7 verse 3 says the gates are not to be opened until the sun is hot, and when they're closed, they should be barred shut. What I love about this is he's given a very specific window for when people can come and go from the city, and it's in the middle of the day. Here's the question: how big is your window, and when is your window? How much are you letting in? What you see, what you hear, how much are you taking in? Do you have any filters? Is it just anything goes, or are the doors just open wide all the time? Is there a certain time? I love it. It's the middle of the day. See, that means that nobody can sneak in or sneak out. See, a lot of times the real destructive things are things that sneak in. The things that happen late at night, things that happen when we're alone, things that happen when nobody's looking, the things we watch, the things we think about, the things we take in, the things we listen to, they're not happening where there's accountability. They're not happening where there's light. They're not happening out in the open. Hey, a great filter is just, would I do this in front of my friends? Would I listen to this? Would I take this in? Would I watch this? Would I absorb this content? Psalms 101 verse 3 says, I will not set my eyes before anything that is worthless. I'm not going to look at anything that has no value to my life. Yet we scroll and we scan and we subscribe and we just get submerged in all of this stuff all the time. Listen, we have to be a warrior when it comes to protecting our thoughts. Paul says in Philippians chapter 4, man, that we should use as a filter, that we're thinking about what's true and honorable and just and pure and lovely and commendable. He says, man, if you're thinking about these things, if that's your filter, is that the filter you've got on your Netflix? I'm only going to watch what's pure and honorable and just. Is that the filter we've got on media, social media, music? What are you taking in? Garbage in, garbage out. It's true. What you allow in is going to contaminate. It's either going to contaminate or strengthen the condition of your heart. We got to be careful. So we need to get our guard up in our own house. But then Nehemiah is very specific. You've got to get your guard up at your post. And I want to encourage you today, this is our community. And everybody in this community has been given an assignment. We can all take position at a post and get our guard up for this house, for this community. When I take a step back, and I think about our church, and I think about where we've come, and I think about your story and the way God has been doing miracles and transforming lives and all of the things that have happened over the last 8 years, it's hard not to be emotional. And I look back and I think, my God, like, look at what you've done. Look at how you've provided. This is incredible. But it's not enough for us just to sit back and be like, wow, look at what God provided. We have to come together, get our guard up, and protect what he's provided. And I don't know, if I could just clear the air for a minute, the responsibility to protect this house isn't just on me. I can't do it all by myself. They didn't finish the wall and say, okay, Nehemiah, we're going to go just reap the benefits of the wall. Can you just head up and stand guard and make sure nothing bad happens? He says, no, if you live here, you guard it. If it's your home, you guard it. If this is your church, then we guard it together. It's not one person, one job, one rule. We take ownership collectively over the destiny of this house. And the guards were posted on the walls, and the walls were elevated. They would have had an elevated post. Why? Because guards do a few things. Number one, guards take the threat seriously. Guards understand. If you're going to actually guard the house, then you're going to stand up and realize that there is an enemy who wants to destroy his church and wants to destroy your life, and we have to take the responsibility of guarding it seriously. Guards have an elevated perspective, which means they can see a little different, and so they don't get caught up in all the stupid little nonsense. They have an ability to get over the little things and focus on the big things. A guard takes responsibility for what's coming. They can see ahead. They use wisdom and discernment so they can cut off issues before they even get to the wall. That's what a guard does. And he says, if you call Jerusalem home, you're going to guard at the posts. And one of the things that has weakened the local church, not just this church, but the church in general, is the idea that if you pastors, leaders, or somebody on payroll should be guarding the house. We are all ministers. We're all priests and prophets. The Bible tells us, New Testament is very clear that the work of the church is a collective. It's not that there are some consumers and some contributors. We work best when we all work together. And so it's our shared home and our shared responsibility. And so we got to guard things like we have to guard each other. That means we guard the caring needs of the church. We get our guard up. If I see a need, I get my guard up. I'm not going to let my friend, someone who's part of my community, suffer. I see a need, I'm going to meet a need. No one person has the capacity to care for every need. We get our guard up. We make a meal. We send a message. We offer to pray. We get our guard up. We get our guard up when it comes to being a generous church. I love what the guys were saying. Oh, man, we're so generous. Listen. Talking about being generous doesn't make people generous. That's not a corporate role. It's a collective responsibility. The church is only generous because we all just make the decision to get our guard up and live generous lives. We call this place home, so we're going to be generous. We get our guard up when it comes to protecting each other's honor and reputation. We want to have a culture of honor. No one person, not me, not anybody, can make sure we have a culture of honor all by ourselves. See, because I'm not in every conversation about you. I'm not always there when somebody tries to talk bad about you to shut it down. And I'm not always there when somebody tries to talk bad about me. You might be, though, and I might be there for you. And the beautiful thing is if we just take responsibility for it, if we make the decision right now, man, I am going to guard the unity of the house. I'm going to guard the reputation of the house. I'm going to guard the honor in the house. And so I'm going to be on guard. So I'm going to be on guard when I hear gossip and I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to be on guard when I start to hear grumbling and a complaining spirit. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to be on guard. We're going to protect the house together. We stand guard together. Why? Ephesians 4, verse 3 and 4 says, be faithful to guard the sweet harmony of the Holy Spirit among you in the bonds of peace, being one body and one spirit, as you were all called into the same glorious hope of divine destiny. Come on, be faithful to guard the unity and the harmony. Why do we need to stand guard for our hearts? And why do we need to stand guard for this house, this community? Why do we need to get on the post? Why? Because we all have a shared hope of divine destiny. Why? Because this is not the end of the story. This is not the end of God's work for Experience Church, and wherever you are right now is not the end of God's work in your life. There's still more to come. Nehemiah chapter 7 verse 4 says, now the city was large and spacious, but there were a few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. So my God put it into my heart. Listen, if you've been having a hard time feeling God put things into your heart, it could be because you haven't had a guarded heart and you've allowed so many other things. Listen, God never stops speaking. It's not he's not speaking to you. So there might be so many other voices and influences and things that you got to shut off so you can actually hear what he's trying to say. Nehemiah is in a place where his heart is properly guarded. And so when God puts something into his heart, he hears it. And he put this into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. Listen, protecting what God provides. So Nehemiah's like, listen, God provided this wall. We're going to protect it. Here's why. When you protect what God provides, I'm going to start again. There are 4 P's. Write them all down. Okay, you ready? When you're protecting what God provides, you are preparing for what God promised. When you protect what God has provided for you, you are actually preparing for what promise lies ahead. Protection is preparation for the promise. Listen, protection of your purity, protection of your reputation, protection of your heart, protection is the preparation. Nehemiah understood we didn't build these walls for the sake of having new walls. We built them for the sake of inviting in more people. We're not going to sit back and enjoy the walls to ourselves, keep the benefits to ourselves. You to stand on guard. You stand on guard. You stand on guard, because it's never been about us. It's always been about, for Nehemiah, it was about the hurting and the lost and the broken and the vulnerable, those in exile far from God. This is the promise. It was the promise of a great return of the people of Israel to Jerusalem, which is a prophetic picture of a great return in our time of intimate relationship to Jesus. We guard this house because this isn't just for us. We guard this house and make the decision to come together and protect what God is doing here, because we know it's not all God has planned. We honestly believe in our hearts that we've not seen the promise yet, that there is a coming revival where broken hearts will be healed and relationships will be restored, and sons and daughters will come to faith, and families will be reunited. Lost people will come home. Depression, anxiety, divorce, suicide, a thing of the past. We see that happening. That's why we stand guard. And God put it in Nehemiah's heart to pull together the people, to invite them back in. And the truth is, I'm believing today that God has put some people in your heart to invite in. God's part of having a properly guarded heart is that there's room in our heart for people, because God's heart is for people. He put it in Nehemiah's heart. Nehemiah's like, okay, God, we've done this so that we can invite people in. And I want to encourage you today, this is not just for our enjoyment. Oh, we're going to fight and we're going to protect what's been provided. Why? Because God's still got a promise and he's getting us ready. And if we can protect this space, then he can release the promise. That's why I love that it was 46 families went and stood and took up positions of defense and guard around the wall. And then Nehemiah says, okay, now that we've protected what God has provided, we're going to invite people in. And over 49,000 exiles returned and found that place of relationship. Come on, talk about multiplied impact. You're going from 46 to over 49,000. I still do believe in my heart that there are thousands of people behind every person in the room. That's not meant to be a heavy weight of responsibility on you, because God multiplies. He's the one that does the work. But if we would just come together and guard our hearts and guard the house, then what would happen if we just said, okay, this is a safe place. We're not going to judge each other. We're going to stand up for each other. We're going to be in unity. We're not going to sweat the small stuff. We're going to keep our eyes on the big picture. We're going to defend one another. Man, that is the type of space and environment that God can trust to send people. And there are still tens of thousands upon thousands of people in our city and surrounding areas and in your city that need Jesus. So listen, don't wait for somebody else to do it. Guard your heart and guard the house, and let's see what God does. What happens? Easter is the best time of year to take the people that are on your heart and invite them into the house, into the place of relationship, into the community, into relationship with Jesus. And so we're going to do something, and We do this most Easters. I think we've done it almost every Easter since we started. And you can even pull out your phone if you want to. I want to keep us focused on what really matters here, because every God vision ends with God. This is all about people coming to know God right here. And you can go to the web domain, number 3, not the full word, bring3.com. Bring3.com. And I want to encourage you, take some time today. Tomorrow, God drops more people in your heart. You can fill it out as many times as you want. It's a simple form. You put 3 names. These are the people who I know that need Jesus. That's it. Get somebody on your heart. And then what we're going to do is we're not going to share those names. We're not going to post them publicly. But every Tuesday morning from now until Easter, we're going to pray over those names, that in the same way that we saw multiplied impact of thousands returning to Jerusalem, that we're going to see multiplied impact, that the people whose names are on that list, sons, daughters, friends, coworkers, neighbors, people that you know are hurting and lost and broken without hope, that as we start praying for them, God's going to shift some things and something's going to open up in their lives, and they'll respond to an invitation from you to be part of an Easter service. We're going to have lots more service times at Easter so we can fit people in, and we're going to be online and all that. So we're believing that as you put those names down, that you're going to be praying for their salvation, we're going to be praying for their salvation, and that God is going to do a miracle of salvation in their lives this Easter. And so I don't want you to miss this. I want you to make sure that you do it. Fill out the form. Quickly, just at some point today, just throw the names in there. And let's believe together that God's going to turn this thing around. Somebody is just waiting for a turnaround, and your prayer might be exactly what they need. I'd like everyone to bow their heads and close their eyes. Jesus, I thank you for every person in the room. God, I know there are people who right now their hearts have been under attack, God. Hearts haven't been protected. God, we're hurting. We're struggling. It's been a difficult season to keep our emotions and things under control. God, would you right now, God, give us the wisdom to get our guard up and protect our heart. God, would you bring us in together so we'd protect the unity of this house? God, we thank you for your plan and your purpose. And now right here in this moment, for you worshiping with us online, or those of you in the room, if you're here and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, I want to give you an opportunity right now to say yes to Jesus. The truth is that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. When we didn't deserve anything, he gave us everything so we could have hope and a future. And so if you're here in the room, if you're watching online, and you know it's time to get right with God. It's time to trust Jesus with my future. I'm going to count to 3. If that's you, I want you to slip your hand up, and I'm just going to pray with you. Real simple, real easy. If that's you, here we go. 1, 2. It's time to make this decision. Get your life right with Jesus. 3, go ahead. Slip up your hand real quick. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Online, you can press the raise a hand button right there as you're watching on the online platform. Now would you do me a favor? Can we all pray together? Whether you raise your hand or not, let's say this prayer in support of our friends who are making this decision. Say, Jesus, I need you in my life. Come into my heart. Turn things around. In your name, amen.